Hey everyone, it is time for a little bit of history, and today we are going to learn about Pocahontas. You may remember her from our story with John Smith that she saved his life, or you might think of her like this from the Disney movies adaptation of her life, but we're going to really listen in and learn about what history tells us about the real Pocahontas. So let's first start with her name. Actually, Pocahontas was not her real name. She was born Amanut, and that was her birth name. They also called her Matoaka, and Pocahontas is really her nickname, because Pocahontas means playful one. And because she was so playful and inquisitive, they named her Pocahontas. It was a cute little endearing nickname that they gave to her. Eventually also, she would be called Rebecca. She's going to be changing her name further on down in the future, but we'll get to that a little later. So Pocahontas is a true princess. She is the daughter of the Chief of Chiefs, Powhatan. He was very powerful and he owned a lot of land, and she was one of his many children. But for some reason, Pocahontas really was his favorite. She really was able to pull on his heartstrings, and he listened to her for some reason more than his other children. If you remember, John Smith made some maps, and I just wanted to point out that map of Powhatan and how much land that he actually resided over, was in charge of. And he was a big guy. He was in charge of all of the other smaller chiefs in the area. So to be the daughter of this chief was a pretty high symbol, and it meant a lot. So you may recall John Smith and him coming over to Virginia, to Jamestown. When Jamestown created their settlement here, they did create it in Powhatan's area of leadership, the area that he owned that was under Powhatan. And so immediately Jamestown came into some problems with Powhatan and with the Native Americans who were already living there. But as we know, John Smith was really good with negotiating with them, trading with them, and being, I guess, the go-between between Jamestown and the Indians there. Pocahontas herself really liked John Smith and trusted him, and she would help Jamestown and would help John Smith with food and planting and different things to help Jamestown survive. We know that she was then kind of the go-between between Jamestown and her father, trying to help keep the peace along with John Smith. We also know from John Smith's notes, in his own notes, he says that Pocahontas once saved his life from Powhatan, who wanted to have John Smith executed. So fast forward ahead to when John Smith gets hurt and he has to sail away back to England to get some help because there were no doctors there for him in Jamestown. So he goes away to England, and as he goes away, things get worse for Jamestown. In fact, Jamestown really suffers. They go back to being lazy, they go back to not doing the work they should, and it kind of turns into a war zone for Jamestown. Fights break out more with the Indians. Jamestown settlers are being not too fair with the Indians. The Indians are being more brutal with their attacks on Jamestown, and everything is kind of in disarray, and there's violence and there's a lot going on. The Indians do not like the settlers do not like the Indians. And all during this time, Pocahontas is there, and she decides to back away and not help Jamestown because things are too violent right now. But in comes a man named Captain Samuel Argall. Not a good character, but he comes into our story here, and he's going to try to create peace between Jamestown and the Indians, between Powhatan and Jamestown. But unfortunately, his way of causing peace was not a very good way. He actually worked with another Indian chief, a smaller Indian chief, a chief that's under Powhatan, to trick Pocahontas onto his ship. He was able to trick her using another Indian. They helped him trick Pocahontas onto the ship. And once he got Pocahontas onto his ship, he actually kept her there as a captive. He basically kidnapped Powhatan's daughter so that Powhatan would stop attacking. Now, this was not kind. This was not the right thing to do. Pocahontas is now a prisoner, but it did do what Captain Argall wanted. Powhatan did stop attacking. Powhatan did release some prisoners that he had, and he did listen to Captain Argall because he treasured Pocahontas so much that he listened, and there was some peace. And so while Pocahontas was a prisoner, there was peace. And she was kept prisoner in Jamestown for a very long time, and actually would not return to her tribe again. So here she is in Jamestown. She is learning now how to cook like the Englishmen. She learns English. She learns how to read. And one of those books that she begins to read is the Bible. And history tells us that Pocahontas did begin to become Christian, and she converted to Christianity. And when she did become a Christian, she changed her name to Rebecca. She wanted to leave behind her other ways, and she decided to change her name to Rebecca. And so now she's called Rebecca. And also, while she's in Jamestown, she meets a man named John Rolfe. John Rolfe, she ends up falling in love with him, and she actually ends up marrying John Rolfe. And this actually was a very good thing for everybody. So Powhatan, there was more peace with Jamestown because of it. And also from the English side, there was more peace with the Indians because she had kind of joined the two and now married someone from Jamestown. It caused a lot of peace, and Powhatan promised as long as Pocahontas was alive that he would never attack Jamestown, because that was now her people and he was her daughter, so he wasn't going to attack anyone from Jamestown. Pocahontas ends up having a son with John Rolfe and names him Thomas Rolfe, and her and Thomas are both invited to go to England, to get on a ship, go to England and meet the king and queen. And so here we have a painting of the depiction of Pocahontas meeting the king and the queen here. And she did. She went to England. She met them. She actually, history says that she was able to even see John Smith as he was there. And then, unfortunately for Pocahontas, she got sick while she was in England. And she came down with a virus and was not able to recover from it. So unfortunately, she passed away there in England. And when she died in England, they built a statue to her because she did cause quite a bit of peace in Jamestown. She was responsible for that peace. And Thomas, her son, ended up staying there in England. And John Rolfe had to return to Jamestown to deliver the sad news that the Indian princess had passed away. She was very young, early 20s, when she actually passed away. So, Pocahontas, a very dramatic life. Lots happened to her. Friendship with Jamestown, saving a man's life, saving John Smith's life, then being kidnapped by those very people, learning their ways, falling in love with one of them and having a son, going to England, visiting the royalty that's there, and then passing away so quickly. So this is the real life of Pocahontas that we have in history. So I hope you liked it, and I hope you took great notes.